Are you guys familiar with the term quarterly earnings calls? Perfectly normal in the equities market. Anything on the S&P, anything in the Fortune 500, anything on the NASDAQ is required to have a quarterly call. Marshall & New does the same thing. They just do it every single week, and they do it publicly. Same as Amazon or Apple, the same as Tesla and Microsoft, the same as they do, but you got to know specifically when it is, and you got to call in, you got to register. Marshall & New will let you do through something called Twitter Spaces. If you know what that is, you push a button, and basically the whole community, which on yesterday's call was about 1,000 people, your phone turns into a walkie-talkie. You can hear everything they're saying, all these that you just all get connected. Now, it's very important for the same reason that I seek out and I fill in the info and I type who I'm with so I can hear what Elon Musk has to say 4 times a year. The same reason that I do that, the same reason that I listen to Marshall & New. There has been resistance on Marshall & New because people within the Marshall & New community would like for the price of the coin to go up. I can't dumb myself down enough to have a conversation. Of course you want it to go up. It's no different than if you owned an equities, if you owned a piece of real estate, if you had a shiny trinket known as gold. You, of course, want it to go up, but one of the importance is getting on these calls, and the reason that I absolutely never miss is I want to hear what the plan and strategy is to bring attention. Money follows attention. It's a very basic concept. And you can talk to people until you're blue in the face, and I'm sure that you have. You've probably met somebody that's got a few bucks in his pocket, and you kind of think, man, I'd like to do what that guy did. And if you go and you corner him, you buy him a cup of coffee, and you go and pick his brain, he's one of 2 kinds of people. He's either a guy that did what's called creating a wave, and that's where the Tim Cooks come in. That's where the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos come in. They create a wave. But everybody else that you meet that's got some jing-jang in your pocket and you wish that you knew their secret rode the wave. There's really no 2 other things you have to do. If you create the wave, you've only got to do it 1 time. If you're a wave rider, and I would fall into that category, I don't see an embarrassment by it, but if you're a wave rider like me, you're always looking for the next wave. You're always looking, your ears to the grindstone, what's coming hot. Is that going to be single family units? Is that going to be equities? Is that going to be in the crypto markets? You're always looking, and you're jumping from one to the next. So you don't get the same kind of rest as the guys that create those waves do, and they only have to do it 1 time. But this is still the truth. So I like to get on with Marshall & New to figure out. You guys are red hot. Everywhere I go, I keep hearing about you. What is the plan now? Because if you rest, it does not matter what you are. If you rest and somebody else goes to work and they get the attention, they get the money. Those words might as well be synonymous when it comes in the world of investing. Wherever attention goes is where the money's going. So I sit in on this call. Now, I told you guys about it from last week because we got an hour. I'm supposed to be on this call. These calls are supposed to last 20 minutes, but sometimes we go long because we're having a good time and we will go to 30 minutes, okay? I sat for an hour and 40 minutes a week ago and listened to Bryce Mitchell cut a promo. I swear to goodness, if the presidential election was tonight, I am probably going to write Bryce Mitchell's name in. This dude is not what I thought he was. He was super clever. He was funny, and he does it with that aw shucks Southern accent that he used. It's just wonderful. I came and told you guys about it, but I got that same experience yesterday, and guess who we had on? Kai Car-France. Now, there is nothing about Kai Car-France for me that's amiss. I'm going to say Kai Car-France as many times as I can. I'm going to say Kai Car-France in this rant to you guys as many times as you can. You want to know why? I like to say Kai Car-France. I don't know if his first name is Kai and then it's like Car with a hyphen like George St. Pierre and then Francis his last name. I don't even know. I just know saying Kai Car-France is cool. And if you think that I'm being silly about that, guys, it's a real thing. Some of the biggest stars in the world operate on what's called a stage name. Arnold Schwarzenegger, by example, was actually born Arnold Schwarzenegger, but when he left Austria and he got to Hollywood, the first thing that anybody that knew anything about the entertainment told him he needs to do, lose the last name Schwarzenegger. They said nobody can say it, nobody's going to like it, you're going to sound foreign, which isn't going to sell to a North American audience. Even if you make it to a marquee, which you never will, you can't fit Schwarzenegger on a billboard. They told him this. And Arnold, who was broke and very impressionable and was certainly willing to please, that was one thing he just wouldn't give. He was proud of it. He was really proud of his name. I think you guys can relate to that. And a number of people who went on to have a level of success, most nowhere near Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they do say the same thing. Hulk Hogan, whose real name is Terry Bollea, really does wish to this day that Terry Bollea was a household name as opposed to Hulk Hogan, which was a stage name. A lot of guys can relate to that. So pro wrestling is a fine example. As a matter of fact, most of those guys are not named what you think they're named, and then when they retire, they wish that they would have built their name. Okay, fine. I'm only bringing to you the mere fact that Kai France is really fun to say, that Kai France is written out beautiful. These things matter in the world of marketing, which you would think is a silly thing. There is nothing silly about anything when you are in the competitive world of viewership. So let me tell you about the last 5 months of this young man's life. He beats a former world champion in Cody Garbrandt, who I believe will someday be into the Hall of Fame. This is all in the last. He stops a former world champion inside of 5 minutes. He then goes into a fight with the number 2 ranked guy in the world. Now, I don't know that I've ever agreed that Ashcroft should be the number 2 ranked guy in the world. I don't know that I personally agree what's going on at 125 pounds to just volley the ball back and forth between Figueiredo and Moreno. As great as those guys are, and I would never pretend otherwise, they've competed so damn many times, I think that Ashcroft should have been the number 1 contender. That's my own personal opinion. I don't get that. That's an opinion. Officially, he's ranked number 2, which comes back to Kai France. You get Kai France, who's young, who's handsome, who's extremely well-spoken, who's from the hottest gym in the world right now, City Kickboxing. Are you guys aware of this? Takes out the former world champion by stoppage, which in our sport is supposed to mean some different level of victory. Then he takes out the number 2 guy. He's got to be fighting for a world championship. Oh, should I mention, the sitting reigning world champion, who is Figueiredo, within the last 24 hours, called out Kai France. Publicly. He publicly stated his case for why he should not be in there with Moreno for a 4th time. And I don't really, that whole thing got a little bit sensitive. Those guys got a little bit sensitive enough that I'm going to leap right over, and I don't want to get into the point, but I will put myself in the school. I don't want to see those guys fight anymore. And I seem to be by myself. I've lobbied you guys, tell me what you think, and you guys say, Chael, I don't see it your way. I want to see those guys fight for 1,050th time. I just don't want to see that fight. Selfishly, I get to be a fan too, but they've done it enough times. There were no fun leading into it. There was no fun at the press conference. There was no fun at the weigh-ins. There was no fun leading up to it. The one time that Moreno tries to come and have a little fun, it hurts Figueiredo's part. Now here we are blown up on a topic that I'm not even comfortable discussing, and I'm pretty good with rhetorical skills. Enough. Figueiredo has earned the right as the champion to have an opinion on who his next opponent is. Not to mention, you can't pull that schoolyard antic where you're scared to do it. You can't pull that when he's already done it 952 times. He's maybe bored. He's maybe uninterested. He's not scared. So now what do? Figueiredo, who's the champion, who's earned the right, we all agree to that, says he should be fighting Kai France. I am going to influence both of my listeners. We want to see Kai France. Then I happen to have a chance to speak with Kai France. Could not have been a more likable guy to a fault. It's to a fault. And I asked him flat out on this call in front of everybody, and it wasn't meant to be a gotcha moment. This was the first time I met Kai France. I'm like you guys. I feel like I know him. I've talked about him. I've read about him. I know people that know him. I've seen his fight, but I've never got to say hello to him before. So I just asked him flat out, what is the holdup here? And he said, man, it's not with me. He said, I'm completely in. I thought beating Garbrandt was going to give me my shot. I found out it wasn't. Fine. They had an idea that I fight Ashcroft, who just happens to be ranked number 2 in the world. I go and do that, and now I'm hoping that it's a champion. Oh, and by the way, the champion happened to call me out, so things are in a pretty good spot. Now, I don't want him to be a gentleman. I don't want him to be quite as nice as he is. I want him to demand that fight. And you got to tie City Kickboxing in with it, because Volkanovski has a big voice. Possibly the biggest voice in our whole sport right now. That's arguable, but it is possibly Israel Adesanya. His own teammates, his own brothers he sees every day, man, if they go and bang a drum, they can reach a lot of people. And I feel as though that should be done for Kai France. I think he's earned it. The history of this sport says if you beat a former world champion, you get a fight for a world championship. That is not a law. That is not even a policy. That is the history of the sport, though. If you defeat a former champion, you get to fight for a championship. Then we're supposed to look at today's rankings. Now, today's rankings, I've talked to you till I'm blue in the face. There's 2 sets. You've got the top 10 list, number 8, number 9, number 10. Doesn't make any bit of difference. Then you've got the top 5. Anybody in circulation in the top 5 can go and fight for a world title at any time. and nobody complains. And a lot of times you got to go to the number 4 guy, and you go, how do you overlook number 3 and over 2? You end up in a spot like Colby Covington, who's the clear number 1 contender, but he's already had the opportunity. It's one of those spots you end up like Robert Whittaker, where he is the clear number 1 contender to the point that Robert Whittaker just beat the guy that's going to fight for the belt, but Whittaker doesn't get to do it because he did it twice. You guys understand this. What do we got to do to get Kai Car that opportunity? First off, he deserves it. I will just share with you that I visited with him, and he could not have been more pleasant. I think that matters to you guys. If you want something good to happen, you don't want it to happen to a jerk. This guy does not qualify as a jerk. He was a gentleman to the highest degree, but he's too polite. He's not going to demand it. It will be the opposite. Kai Car is so new. He's so young within the sport. He's 29 years old. He's a new father, husband, just living his life, doing everything right. He's surrounded by superstars. To be a world champion is a normal thing within the gym of City Kickboxing. You got Dan Hooker over here, right? I mean, that gym's got 12 guys. I don't know if you're aware of that. They have 12 people within City Kickboxing signed to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and that statistic is 14 months old. They could be 15, 16 by now. The point that I'm making, sometimes when you get so close to the trees, you don't see the forest. Sometimes when you're thinking, who do I need to go to get my message out? Sometimes that's the dude that you're putting your shin pads on next to. Sometimes it's the guy that you're complaining to as you're wrapping your hands and putting your gloves on. They've had such incredible success out there. Speaking of which, I asked Kai Car about it. I said, by the way, you guys are doing something different, but I've been in the sport my entire life. This is exactly what I said to him. I said, I've been in the sport my entire life. If I was to guess your training regimen, it looks something like this. You work out a couple of times a day, 1 in the morning, get a rest in the afternoon, go back in the evening, and you do that 6 days a week. If I'm wrong, you do that 5 days a week. Tell me where the glitch is. Tell me what you're doing that isn't the same recipe everybody else. And he only had one correction. He said, as a matter of fact, our gym goes 7 days a week. He did not specify to say we all go in and train 7 days a week. He did not, but he said they have the opportunity to, that there is no day that gym's closed. So he did lead me to the conclusion to believe that he doesn't take a day off. If I was to just take him at his word, I'm choosing my interpretation of that with the point being he can take whatever day off he wants. The Russians that win more Olympic medals than anybody take Wednesday off. Just by example, in North America, we generally take Sunday off. But it's very important that you have a break within the week. However, that's usually built in and forced into the gym because that might not sound interesting to you. But the mere fact that gym is offering classes, that somebody comes in and open that, somebody turns the heat on, somebody turns the radio on, somebody mops those mats, somebody has those showers ready with a towel when you come out, which is the only thing that you have to look forward to if you're living a fighter's lifestyle, 7 days a week. Then somebody gets credit for that. I imagine that somebody is Eugene Berriman, but he must have put a very good team around him because Eugene Berriman, that's the head coach. Coach Berriman, he's in everybody's corner. He's got to be traveling 3 and 4 and 5 times a week. And Kai Car spoke to me a little bit about strategy. Strategy of the gym. When a member of City Kickboxing gets put on a card, they try to get multiple people onto that same card. Now, that's just good common sense so that everybody can focus. There's a process called peaking that you've probably been spoken to the point of nausea, but it also comes down to travel issues. It comes down to nutrition issues. It does come in, when are you doing your sprints? And sprints don't literally mean that you run as hard as you can. You can do a sprint by fighting. It's a conditioning thing where you get your heart rate in one zone, you move it to another zone, then you go on a sprint, your chest is popping out. It's one of these things, and if your teammates are doing the same thing, they're not just lugging in because, they owed you because you did it for them. It can be a big deal. Part of the strategy, because when I talked to this young man, Kai Car France, he did not have a specific thing. Here's what we do that nobody else. Now, he talked about stuff they do for working out. He talked about road work. He talked about moving the weights around. He talked about getting in the pool. A lot of aquatics work. Everything he said is what everybody else does. But this little gym in New Zealand is taking over the world of MMA. There's something special going on here. There's something special. I believe that Kai Car France should be fighting for a world championship. I know that Kai Car France is down to 3. And I think Figueiredo, who has chosen Kai Car, I think Figueiredo's got a bigger decision in this than any of us. My opinion is based on malice. I've already seen it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like the press conference. Screw you, Chael. What's that got to do with who gets to fight for a title? But we are down to 3. You either put Moreno in there or you go with Kai Car. I'm asking you guys, telling you he was a gentleman. I'm promising you'll like him. I assure you it's fun to say Kai Car France. How would you like to say Kai Car France, world champion?